Hello everyone, I'm Chris Mozillo Sonusson, and this is a video about sound. Sound! It's an important part of video games and life. It's one of the main senses you actually use whilst you're playing a video game, as well as sight and a little bit of touch. Although, I think Nintendo might be trying to incorporate taste into the equation.
Oh God! Oh.
So I want to talk to you about some instances where sound has been used in a video game in a particularly noteworthy way. I'm not just talking about instances where the sound of guns is really, really impressive and realistic, or realistic animal sounds. Not even like a soundtrack that's really good. I'm not saying that that sort of audio is bad. I mean, without it, games wouldn't be very fun.
Sound a little bit like this almost.
No, realistic gun sounds are great if you're into that sort of thing. Makes the whole game seem more impactful. And then soundtracks themselves are wonderful because they had such emotional impact to scenes. These can last with you for years and years to come, to the point where every single time you hear that particular track, you get a wave of emotions as you remember the events that may have occurred with it, or a character who died. Instead, I'm talking about games that play with sound and the soundtrack in interesting ways and kind of go above and beyond in that matter. I'm going to start with games that play with the idea of a soundtrack. Two examples that I want to talk about, one of which is Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. This was a game that was all based around knowing that you'd be doing really cool stuff all of the time. I mean, you're a robotic ninja samurai. I don't think you can get much cooler than that. The game soundtrack had two versions of each song, one that was purely instrumental and one that had lyrics to it. The idea behind this was, whilst you were slicing through many enemies with a sweet guitar track blasting on the background, the moment you start doing something even cooler than cool, ice cold, the lyrics would cut in singing about how souls can't be cut. This was kind of great because it added that extra layer to the combat and soundtrack. The game already had this awesome soundtrack to it, but with the addition of the lyrical component, it kind of let you know when you're going just a little bit extra and just being that extra bit awesome as you're doing your robotic mayhem with your massive samurai sword, dressed as a mariachi.
Adios, amigos.
By having two versions of the exact same song, you got a seamless transition from one to the other, depending on the mood and what was going on, whether or not you were being a badass. It was just a nice simple addition with a fun little bit of audio play. Another game that had a very similar system to do with soundtracks with Nier Automata. Although this time, it had three variants of each track, because, you know, you just gotta constantly one-up one another. So in Nier Automata, it was a very similar system that involved the sort of two songs, which were one with the lyrical version, one with the instrumental version, and these would have played during combat as well as quests. You'd get moments where you just watched a robotic parent get worried about the potential death of the robotic son, and just as they have this really warming, heartfelt moment, the lyrics of the song kick in, and it's just a real gut punch of emotion. They just want to be human. But in Nier Automata, you also had a transition into a digitized version of the songs as well, because whilst you were hacking enemies in combat or wherever, the song changed into a more sort of bit-tuney variant of the song. And this would essentially again be kind of the exact same song carrying on from the exact same moment you're at, but different. Now, let's talk about sound. Let's talk about sound. Let's talk about sound. As a mechanic. Let's talk about two games again. Again, because I can only actually think of two different things. Overwatch. Overwatch has this wonderful sound design. There's so much attention to detail in the whole thing, and it also plays this major role in the actual gameplay itself. Obviously you can hear all the gun shooting, bang bang, etc. Then you take it to another level. Each hero will shout a line whenever they use their ultimate ability, unique ones depending on whose team they're on. All pretty good stuff. You know when to hide in fear or charge on into the battle and almost definitely die immediately. Then we have footsteps. Each hero has unique footsteps for their feet. Not only this, but they're also louder the bigger the threat. Reaper has big heavy boots that you can hear from miles away. Zenyatta floats, so doesn't actually have any footsteps. But what this means is you can always tell which hero is coming just by the sound of their footsteps alone, which is incredible. The amount of information you can acquire just from listening in Overwatch is numerous. You don't even need to be able to see. Well, you do. Speaking of, there's another wonderful thing that occurs in Overwatch. The characters talk to one another. Imagine that you're playing the game. An odd idea, I know, but you also don't have the voice chat on because honestly, why would you? If you wanted to listen to angry nerds all day, you'd go to work. If there's an enemy coming from behind, you may not hear the angry cries of your fellow nerds over their mics. Instead, what happens is the tracer near you may cry, "Behind you!" Or Soldier 76 will tell you to watch your backsides. This isn't the player talking to you. This is the characters themselves, independent of any player input. And it's the revealing of this information you can't see with your human eyes, through audio that is such attention to detail. A similar thing occurs in Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. Without wanting to spoil the game too much, the game uses the audio and the voices in your head as the tutorial, the UI, the tooltips, the everything. You see something you've never seen before, some mysterious symbol. The voices in your head start telling you to focus and that you need to focus.
Focus. Look closer. Look. Use your eyes. Why isn't she looking closer? She needs to look closer. Focus.
In combat, if an enemy is weak, you'll be informed to finish him off quickly, letting you know its health is low, as there are no health bars to be seen. One of the things that really got me excited was during combat, if an enemy was coming up from behind, swinging its sword, the voices would suddenly panic, behind you, stirring you to dodge out of the way, just in time.
Behind you!
Without the audio in this game, you wouldn't be nearly as effective within the combat, let alone exploring the world itself. It uses the game's audio not just as a great soundtrack or realistic footstep sounds, but instead it uses it as a means of exposing the player to information. I'd love for there to be more games that play around with audio and sound, not just as a sort of loud, spooky, scary noises in a spooky, scary game, but instead as a means of giving information to the player that they might not have actually seen or be able to see. Information that can only be acquired through listening to the game. Anyway, that was my rambling love affair with sound. If you can think of any other examples, leave them in the comment section down below, or if you really want to, maybe like or even subscribe to my stuff. Anyway, thank you and goodbye.